Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and in Yirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Kuf Nun Beis Amud Aleph. We begin a new Siman today, Siman Shin Chaf Beis Din Noiled B'Shabbos, the halachas that pertain to things that come into existence on Shabbos, Ubay Vav Seifim, and here we have 6 Seifim. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Anesunim Bat Sarah Ubashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakom Yerachem Alehem, V'Yitziam Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afela La'ira Mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Bagalo V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema for Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malka Chana, Meshaber Ben Esther Fradel, Yitzhak Ben Tzion Ben Dusha, Rivka Bas Shira Leah, and Chava Hadassah Bas Serel. They should have a refu shalema. Pesach Shar Chayla Yisrael. Okay, Siman Shin Chav Beis Din Noiled B'Shabbos Ubay Vav Seifim, says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, very famous, the first Mishnah of Masechtas Beitza. Beitza Shenoilda B'Shabbos, an egg that is laid on Shabbos. So this right away is kind of classic Noilad. You have an egg that wasn't here before Shabbos. It is now here on Shabbos. It was laid on Shabbos. What's the halacha of this beitza? Says the Mechaber, Asura. This beitza is usher. It is prohibited. Afilu l'taltala, even to touch this egg, even to touch the egg that was laid on Shabbos is usher. And we will see why in the Mishnah Berurah. Furthermore, says the Mechaber, Va'afilu nis'arva be'elef, even if this egg, which is aser, this egg that was laid on Shabbos, even if it becomes mixed in to 1,000 other eggs, kulan asurais, all of the eggs are going to be rendered aser until after Shabbos. However, there is one kula that we have here. V'yacha lachayf aleha kli shaloi tishaver. You have this egg that was laid on Shabbos. Eggs, valuable substance. You want to make sure that the egg doesn't get destroyed on Shabbos. So you could take a keli, you could take a bowl, let's say, and you could overturn it and place it on top of the egg in order to protect it so that it should not become broken. However, you have to take care that you do not touch the egg. You don't touch it with your hand, or you don't touch it with the keli. You can't come into contact with the keli, not even in indirect contact, by touching it with the keli. You can't come into contact with the egg. I think I misspoke. I think I said you can't come into contact with the keli. You cannot come into contact with the egg. You can't touch it, not with your hand. You also cannot come into indirect contact with the egg. You can't touch the egg even with the keli that you're placing over it in order to protect it. Okay, now let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah and let's explain what's going on behind the scenes here. Why is it that an egg that's laid on Shabbos is aser? Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Aleph Afilu l'taltala. This egg is not only aser to eat, it's aser even to touch. Explains the Mishnah Berurah why. Because since this egg is not available to us in order to eat it. We're not allowed to eat this egg on Shabbos. And the Mishnah Berurah soon is going to explain why we're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. But right now, the Mishnah Berurah is setting out to explain to you, why is this egg aser even betiltel? Why is it muktzah? Why are you not allowed to move it? And he explains the reason is because it's not chazi la'achila, because we're not allowed to eat it. And therefore, kimuktzah damya, once the egg is not available to us to eat, now it's completely muktzah. It's muktzah machmas gufay. You're not allowed to, it's a very stringent muktzah. You're not allowed to touch it. You're not allowed to move it l'tzarech gufay. If you want to use it as a stopper for a bottle, you're not allowed to move it l'tzarech mekoymai. If you need the place that's being occupied by this egg, you're not allowed to move it. This egg is muktzah machmas gufay. It is intrinsically muktzah. Why? Because it has no real Shabbos use. The main purpose of an egg is to eat the egg, and this egg we are not allowed to eat. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to start explaining why is it that we're not allowed to eat this egg. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hayda asura ba'achila. This egg is aser ba'achila, that we're not allowed to eat it. Hainu l'gama chaya, meaning that we're not even allowed to swallow it down while it's raw. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is certainly you can't cook the egg on Shabbos, right? So what do you mean it's not chazi lachil, it's not available for eating? How would you eat it? Well, the answer is you couldn't eat a raw egg. So you're not even allowed to swallow this egg down raw. Why? Hu gzeira mishum Shabbos de mikla achar Yom Tov. The answer is that this is an Isser D'Rabbanan, and it's a gzeira because of an egg that was laid on Shabbos that fell out after Yom Tov. You had Friday was a day of Yom Tov, followed by Shabbos. Now, what we're worried about is an egg that was laid on Shabbos when Friday was Yom Tov. That egg would be Aser B'Daraisa. You would not be allowed to eat that egg on Shabbos, and it would be an Issa Daraisa. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Sha'az, in the case where Friday was Yom Tov, and the egg was laid on Shabbos, the next day after Yom Tov, Sha'az, Beitza Hanol Daba, the egg that is laid on Shabbos following the day of Yom Tov, Asura Midaraisa Ba'achila. That egg is Asur Ba'achila, an Issa Daraisa. Why? The Chol Beitza de Bisyalda Ha'idna, because the Chazal teach us in the beginning of Masechtas Beitza that an egg that is laid today may esmoil gomrola. That egg was completed inside the hen the day before. So, when an egg is laid on Shabbos, Chazal tell us that that egg, the completed development of that egg takes place the day before it's laid. So an egg that's laid on Shabbos, its development was completed on Erev Shabbos. Now, if Erev Shabbos was a day of Yom Tov, that means when did this egg complete its development inside the hen? On Friday, which was a day of Yom Tov. And now it's laid the next day on Shabbos. You want to eat it on Shabbos. That egg is Asur Ba'achila on Shabbos midaraisa. Why? V'nimtza kishenechlena, if you eat that egg on Shabbos, the Yom Tov hechina l'Shabbos, it comes out that Yom Tov prepared the egg for Shabbos. The egg reached its development, it reached its full development inside the hen when? On Friday, which was a day of Yom Tov. So the egg was completed on Yom Tov. It was laid on Shabbos, you want to eat it on Shabbos. Comes out that you want to eat an egg on Shabbos that was prepared on Yom Tov. That's a problem on Issa Daraisa. V'zeh Osir. Why is this Osir? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. This is taken right out of the Gemara at the beginning of Masechtas Beitza. Midiksiv, because it says in the pasuk by the Mon, V'haya b'yom hashishi, and it was on the sixth day. What's the sixth day? Friday, Erev Shabbos. It was on Erev Shabbos, V'hechinu es asher yaviu. Klal Yisrael picked an extra portion of Mon on Erev Shabbos. They picked a portion of Mon on Erev Shabbos for Shabbos. And they went ahead and they prepared it for Shabbos. When did they prepare it? They prepared it on Friday. Now, a typical Friday is a weekday. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Stam Shishi Chayilhu. A regular, ordinary Friday is a day of Chayil. It's a weekday. What is this pasuk telling me? Lahayrais lanu, this pasuk that tells me specifically that Klal Yisrael prepared the mon that they were going to eat on Shabbos, they prepared it on Friday, which is usually a weekday. That pasuk is coming to teach me, Lahayrais lanu, that dafka b'choil tzarich lahachin l'seudas Shabbos, that the Suda of Shabbos has to be prepared on a weekday. V'chein l'Yom Tov, and also when you prepare food for Yom Tov, the gamhu ikrei Shabbos, Yom Tov is also called Shabbos. We'll get to that in a moment, but Yom Tov is also called Shabbos. So, what you're going to eat on Shabbos, any preparation that it requires, that preparation has to be done on a weekday. What you eat on Yom Tov, the preparation has to be done on a weekday. Aval b'yomtiv asa lahachid l'suda Shabbos. But yomtiv is not allowed to prepare for Suda Shabbos. The Cholshked, and certainly the B'Shabbos, that Shabbos, which is a higher level of Kedusha than Yomtiv, also lahachid l'seudas Yomtiv. Shabbos is not allowed to prepare for the Suda of Yomtiv. Valkein, therefore, Kishenolda habeitza b'Yomtiv shechal yom rishon. Let's say you have Yomtiv that falls out on Sunday, and an egg is laid on Sunday. Okay? If an egg is laid on Sunday, which is a day of Yom Tov, when did it reach its full development? The day before, on Shabbos. That means that Shabbos is preparing for Yom Tov. That's a no-no. Gam kain osir min HaTorah la'achla. In that case, it would also be an issa daraisa to eat that egg that was laid on Yom Tov. Why? Because it reached its full development inside the hen, me'esmail, the day before on Shabbos. Which would mean that Shabbos is preparing for Yom Tov. Turns out that if you eat it on Sunday, which is a day of Yom Tov, it was prepared on Shabbos. Comes out that Shabbos prepared for Yom Tov, which is Aser. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, what kind of hachana are we talking about here? If you eat an egg that was laid on Shabbos and Friday was Yom Tov, you're telling me it's an issa daraisa to eat that egg on Shabbos. Why? Because it was prepared on Friday, which is Yom Tov. So Yom Tov was meichin l'Shabbos. Did you do hachana on Friday Yom Tov for Shabbos? You didn't do anything. Whatever hachana happened on Friday, that the egg completed its development inside the hen on Friday, which happened to be Yom Tov, did you have anything to do with it? No, that's been a shamayim. It had no human involvement at all. It doesn't matter. It's still aser. Gam zehu b'chlal hachana. This is also part of hachana, and it's aser. So, what do we have so far? Let's take a step back. Let's just review this. We're learning a very interesting halacha here. The Torah HaKadosh tells us by the mun that Klal Yisrael picked an extra portion of mun on Erev Shabbos, which was Shabbos' mun. That's the mun that they were going to eat on Shabbos. The pasuk goes out of its way to give me the Torah goes out of its way to give me a pasuk that says V'haya b'yom hashishi, and it was on day 6, Erev Shabbos. V'hechinu es asher yaviu, they prepared the mun on Friday that they were going to eat on Shabbos. What do I need this pasuk for? What do we need it for? Says the Gemara, what we need this for is to teach us an interesting halacha. A Stam Friday is usually a weekday. The Torah HaKadosh is coming to tell us a halacha that Sudas Shabbos needs preparation on a weekday. It must be prepared on a day of Chol. It cannot be prepared on a day of Yom Tov. So if the calendar falls out that you have a 2-day Yom Tov or a 3-day Yom Tov, and Friday is Yom Tov, and then it's followed by a day of Shabbos, the hachana of the food that you're going to eat on Shabbos cannot be on Friday. Now, Erev Tavshil and Hilchas Yom Tov, we'll deal with that another time. But high level, the Sudas Shabbos needs hachana on a weekday. It can't have hachana on Yom Tov. If it had hachana on Yom Tov, it's aser. Our case here with the egg, we have a mechaber. Mechaber says an egg that's laid on Shabbos, it's aser. You're not allowed to eat it. And because you're not allowed to eat it, it's muktzah. It's so muktzah, it's muktzah machmas gufay. It's the most chomer type of muktzah. You're not allowed to touch it, you're not allowed to move it, you're not allowed to move it even tzarech gufay, tzarech mekaymay. It's a very stringent muktzah. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, it's an issa d'Rabbanan, and it's a gzera because of this case where Shabbos was followed by a day of Yom Tov on Friday. What's the problem in that case? The egg is laid on Shabbos. Chazal tell us if an egg is laid on Shabbos, that means that it reached its full development the day before, on Friday. Friday was Yom Tov. So that means that Yom Tov is doing hachana, it's preparing for Shabbos. In that case, the egg laid on Shabbos would be also midaraisa to eat. Came along the Chachamim, and the Chachamim made a gzera. Since the egg would be also midaraisa to eat if Friday was Yom Tov, That would make a gzeira, even if Friday is not Yom Tov, the egg is also to eat midarabanan. And once the egg is also to eat midarabanan, the egg has no Shabbos use. Once it has no Shabbos use, it becomes muktzah, and it's also even bitiltal. The Mishnah Berurah Agav also explained over here that this affects, this Issa Daraisa of the Hechinu Es Asher Yaviu does not only affect Shabbos followed by Friday Yom Tov, it also affects Yom Tov on Sunday that comes after Shabbos, because the egg that would be laid on Sunday reached its completion on Shabbos. So that would be Shabbos doing hachana for Yom Tov. So it would be also b'daraisa to eat that egg on Sunday of Yom Tov. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cotton base. The Mechaber told us an interesting halacha. The Mechaber said that this egg is so usher that if this egg would get mixed into 1,000 other eggs, it wouldn't be bottle. All 1,000 eggs are going to become usher. Now, certainly, if one egg fell into 1,000 eggs, so you have a lot more than roiv connected this one egg of Isser. So why do we not employ bittel? Many of you, Baruch Hashem, know the answer on the tip of your tongue from a concept that we've learned about already several times, and that is the concept that a davar sheyesh loy matirin is afilu be'elef loy bottle, something that is going to become mutter on its own, just through the passage of time, cannot be bottle. Now over here, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with an egg that's usher because of muktzah. So with the passage of time, when we come to Oy Shabbos and Masi Shabbos, the egg is no longer going to be muktzah. So it's going to be mutter. So it's a davar sheyesh loy matirin. Since it's a davar sheyesh loy matirin, afilu be'elef loy bottle. Why? The Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us. It makes perfect sense. Why should we employ bittel and allow you to go end up eating an egg somewhere in these 1,000 eggs? You might pick up the egg of Isser. Why should we employ bittel to allow you to possibly eat an egg of Isser? It's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Wait until Motzei Shabbos, it'll become mutter, and then you'll eat your eggs then. Wait until Motzei Shabbos, and don't employ bittel. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cotton base kulan asurais. All the eggs are aser. Why? They have a davar sheyesh lo matirin. The kaimalana we paskin the davar sheyesh lo matirin afilu be'elef loy bottle. A davar sheyesh lo matirin is not bottle even when you have 1,000 mutter against it. Va'atam, the rationale is da'ad she'ata yechlena. Before you go ahead and eat it now on Shabbos via taltalena, or move it b'chshash iser, when you might be coming up against an iser, maybe you're eating or you're touching the egg of iser, the one that was laid today on Shabbos. Yoser toiv, it's better sheyamten ad shetechshach, wait until Motzei Shabbos v'yeh kulam beheter, and then all the eggs will be mutter. V'chein, and there's a very important line here in the Mishnah Berurah. V'chein, we find a similar concept. Im hu safik im nolda b'Shabbos oy mikoydem. One, what we just dealt with over here in the Mechaber is that the egg of Isser fell into 1,000 other eggs. Davar sheyesh lo matirin, it's not bottle. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, the same concept would hold true. Let's say you go out to the chicken coop sometime Shabbos morning, and there's an egg in the nesting box that was not there yesterday. You don't know when it was laid. It's a suffix. Was it laid on Shabbos, or was it laid before Shabbos? You don't know. It's a suffix. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Gam kain aser mitam zeh. That egg, which, remember, that egg is only an issa d'Rabbanan. Why is this egg aser? A gzeira, because of the case of Shabbos that comes after Yom Tov, when Yom Tov was Friday. But if it's a regular Shabbos, where Friday was a weekday, the egg that's laid on Shabbos is only also d'Rabbanan. Now we have a suffix d'Rabbanan. So why are we being so machmir by a suffix d'Rabbanan? Usually suffix d'Rabbanan lekula. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Over here we're not going to employ suffix fake d'Rabbanan lekula. Why? Because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Don't employ the loophole of sveika d'Rabbanan lekula if you could just wait until Motzei Shabbos and then eat it beheter gomor. After b'chol duchta kamelon the suffix d'Rabbanan lahakel. Over here we don't say that. Vayin sham oid b'magen Avram u'b'Mishnah Berurah inyan im nisarev hasofik ba'acheros. Now you have a double suffix. What would happen if you have this egg that's a suffix? Was it laid on Shabbos or was it laid on Erev Shabbos? So we say, we don't say sveika d'Rabbanan lekula. because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Okay, so the egg is usher. Now what happens if that egg falls into another 1,000 eggs? So now you don't have a vadai issa d'Rabbanan that fell into 1,000 other eggs. You have a suffix of an issa d'Rabbanan that fell into 1,000 eggs. What do you do then? This is discussed back in later on in Siman Tuf Kuf Yud Gimel. However, im hishkim kaidem amod hashachar. Let's say you get up very early Shabbos morning. You get up before the crack of dawn. Umotza habeitza munachas bahakina shel tarnagolos. And you find an egg in the nesting box. Now, let's analyze the case over here. You come in Shabbos morning. The last time you were in the chicken coop was Friday morning. Now you go to the chicken coop Shabbos morning, but when Shabbos morning? Before the crack of dawn Shabbos morning, you come and you look in the nesting box in the chicken coop, and there's an egg. So now you have a suffix. You don't know when the egg was laid. Maybe the egg was laid Friday afternoon, or maybe the egg was laid Friday night, in the middle of the night sometime, and it's a Beitza Shenolda b'Shabbos. You have a suffix, right? Says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, we're going to go lekula. Muteris lataltala ula achla. That egg is mutter betiltal. You're allowed to move it, and you're even allowed to eat it. Why? Didn't we just say that since it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, even though it's a sfeika d'Rabbanan, we're going to be machmer? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, this case is different. Why? The ruban einon yoldois balayla. Because the vast majority of hens do not lay eggs in middle of the night. Now, you came upon this egg before dawn Shabbos morning. So what's your suffix? Your suffix is, was it laid Friday afternoon during the day, or was it laid Friday night in the middle of the night? Well, the vast majority of hens don't lay eggs in the middle of the night. So now you have a roiv that tells you that this egg was laid Friday afternoon during the day. It's also only a sfeika d'Rabbanan, right? So even though it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, over here we're going to go lekula v'talinan, and we are going to assume the may esmoil that from yesterday on Friday afternoon, shahaya yom chayil, which was a weekday, nilda, that's when it was laid. Okay. Now, the Mechaber told us in the final halacha of Sif Aleph, the Mechaber told us the Beitza Shenolda b'Yom Tov, you're not allowed, it's usher, not allowed to eat it. You're not even allowed to move it. It's asura afilu l'taltala, because it's muktzah. You're not even allowed to move it. It's not bottle, even 1 in 1,000. But what you can do, said the Mechaber, is you can take a keli, like a bowl, and you can overturn it on top of the egg in order to protect it. But, the Mechaber said, you have to be very careful. Ubelvad shelo yigaba. You have to make sure that you do not touch the egg. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what do those words mean? That you have to be careful that you do not touch the egg. Says the Mishnah Berurah, shelo yigaba, hainu bahakli. It means you can't touch the egg even indirectly with the bowl. You have to be careful that when you put the bowl over the egg, the bowl does not come into contact with the egg. Certainly, you can't touch the egg with your hand directly. Vatam, and the reason for this is, agula, since an egg is round, mistanas mimakaima, with the slightest touch, the egg is going to move. So first of all, realize, generally speaking, the isser of muktzah is an isser tiltal. You're not allowed to move muktzah. High level, we paskin like the gra, that you're allowed to touch muktzah. You're not allowed to move muktzah, but you're allowed to touch muktzah. But an egg is different. Why is an egg different? Because an egg is round, and with the slightest touch, the egg is going to move. And therefore, we don't use the kula that says you're allowed to touch an egg, because touching an egg is moving an egg. Now, the Mishnah Berurah also told us, not only are you not allowed to touch the egg, even though touching is normally mutter by muktzah, right? Not only are you not allowed to touch the egg directly with your hand, you're also not allowed to touch the egg with the keli that you're using to cover it. Now the question is, why not? If you recall, if you're chazering, and you go back to our days when we were learning the halachas of muktzah, Indirect touching is what we call tiltul min hatzad, touching something, moving something indirectly. And tiltul min hatzad is often a heter when it comes to muktzah. Very often, tiltul min hatzad, indirect touching, is mutter when it comes to muktzah. So why over here is it aser? The reason is because this is tiltul min hatzad l'tzayrich davar aser. When is tiltul min hatzad a heter? Tiltul min hatzad is a heter when it's l'tzayrich davar mutter. When you have something sitting on your bed and you need to have use of your bed and you want to employ tiltul min hatzad to get something muktzah off your bed, that's tiltul min hatzad, let's indirect movement of the muktzah, l'tzayrich davar hamutter, for the purposes of the bed. But tiltul min hatzad l'tzayrich davar aser is aser. Now over here, you're going ahead, you're covering the egg with a bowl. Why? You're doing it to protect the egg. That's l'tzayrich davar aser. If you would now do tiltul min hatzad and move the egg with the bowl, yes, it's tiltul min hatzad, but it's tiltul min hatzad l'tzayrich davar aser, and that's why it would be aser. Okay, moving along to Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber. So, we have to fix down in our minds here for a moment. On a normal week, where Friday is a Yom Chol, where Friday is a weekday, a Beitza Shenoilda B'Shabbos is aser, but why is it aser? It's an Issa D'Rabbanan. Really, there's no reason why you can't eat this egg, right? But it's an Issa D'Rabbanan. What's the Isser? A Gzeira. What would happen if Friday would have been Yom Tov? If Friday would have been Yom Tov, then the Beitza Shenoilda B'Shabbos was completed inside the hen on Friday. That means that Friday, which is Yom Tov, is doing Hachana for Shabbos. Now to eat that egg would be an Issa D'Oraisa. Since in that case, eating the egg would be an Issa D'Oraisa, on a regular week, eating the egg that's laid on Shabbos is an Isser D'Rabbanan. And once eating it is an Isser D'Rabbanan, moving it is also also because the egg becomes muktzah. Right? Now, says the Mishnah Berurah another case. Shabbos shala'achar Yom Tov oy lefanav. Let's say you have a day of Shabbos that comes after Yom Tov. So again, Friday was Yom Tov. Oy lefanav. Or a day of Shabbos that comes before Yom Tov. Yom Tov is on Sunday. Noilda bazeh, an egg laid on one day, asura bazeh is aser on the next day. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's take the first case. Shabbos shala'achar Yom Tov. Friday was Yom Tov, and Shabbos came after Yom Tov. If the egg is laid on Friday, listen carefully to what I said. The case that we were dealing with in Sif Aleph was the egg was laid on Shabbos. If the egg is laid on Shabbos and Friday was Yom Tov, that's the case where the egg is also b'daraisa. Because since the egg was laid on Shabbos, it was completed on Friday. Friday was Yom Tov is doing Achana for Shabbos. Now we're tweaking the case. Friday was Yom Tov, Shabbos is Shabbos. When was the egg laid? Not on Shabbos. The egg was laid on Friday. Says the Mechaber, the egg that's laid, not completed, the egg that's laid on Friday, which means it was completed when? It was completed the day before. It was completed on Thursday. So now we have an egg that was completed inside the hen on Thursday. Thursday was a weekday. Friday is Yom Tov. The egg is laid on Yom Tov. Now it's Shabbos, and you want to eat the egg. Could you eat the egg? No. Shabbos shalach Yom Tov alafanav nolda bazeh asura bazeh. Now, if we do the math, there doesn't seem to be any reason why eating this egg should be aser. Why is it aser? Did Yom Tov prepare for Shabbos? No, not really. You're telling me that if this egg was laid on Friday, that means it was completed inside the hen on Thursday. Thursday was a weekday. So the hachana of this egg, the completion of this egg, took place on Thursday. It's a weekday. Then it was laid on Friday, which is Yom Tov. Now it's Shabbos, you want to eat it on Shabbos. Why can't I eat it? Says the Mechaber, you cannot eat it. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, why can't you eat it? The reason is, dim noichlena, because if you can eat it on Shabbos, have a kim mechen miyoim echad lechaveroi. It's as if this egg had hachana from one day to the next, the chanal b'sif cotton aleph, meaning it's as if it had hachana on Yom Tov. What do you mean it's as if it had hachana as Yom Tov? Because really, the hachana of the egg, we look at the hachana of the egg really to be the day that it was completed inside the hen. Now, in our case, the egg was completed inside the hen on Thursday, and Thursday was a weekday. But did we have access to that egg on Thursday? No, we didn't. When did we get access to that egg? We got access to the egg when it was laid. When was it laid? It was laid on Friday. What was Friday? Friday was Yom Tov. Even though the laying of the egg, we don't recognize midaraisa as being an act of hachana. The hachana really took place on Thursday. Abalamaisa, since there was no way we could get to the egg, we had to wait till it was laid on Friday to get to the egg, and it became available on Friday, which was Yom Tov. It looks like the hachana of the egg took place on Friday, and now it's asur mid'Rabbanan on Shabbos. And again, in this case, since it's going to be asur ba'achila on Shabbos, asur gamkein b'tiltel, it's also going to be asur b'tiltel because it's going to be muktzah. Okay, moving along to Sif Gimel. Excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol nihiyeh b'dvarav. Sif Gimel. Apologize for the bottle. Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber. Peiros shenoshru min ha'ilon b'Shabbos. Fruit that fell off the tree on Shabbos. So you have an apple tree in your backyard, and you come out Shabbos afternoon, and there's some beautiful apples laying on the ground that fell off the tree on Shabbos. Oh, some fresh apples for Shalosh Udas. Says the Mechaber, no. Peiros shenoshru min ha'ilon b'Shabbos. Fruit that fell off the tree on Shabbos, asurim by b'yoyim, they are prohibited on Shabbos, v'lo erev, but motzei Shabbos, mutarim miyad, they become mutter immediately after the zman of Ois Shabbos. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Hey, Peiros shenoshru, fruit that fell off the tree are asur on Shabbos, says the Mishnah Berurah, and we're going to apply what we just learned before. Even if you see the apple on the ground and you say, I didn't look at the tree since Friday morning at 10 o'clock. There are apples on the ground now. I don't know when they fell. It's a suffix to me. Did they fall before Shabbos or did they fall on Shabbos? Says the Mishnah Berurah, even though in this case you have a suffix, gam kein asur. It's still asur. Why? Because the apples are a davar sheyesh lo matirin. We're not going to say sveika d'Rabbanan l'kula and allow you to eat this apple on Shabbos if we could wait until Motzei Shabbos and it will become mutter and legamri without a suffix. So you'll eat it on Motzei Shabbos. Vayin b'psachim nun vav amud aleph da'afilu im kavanasei lemitzvah. Even if you want to make use of this apple that fell off the tree for a mitzvah, what's the mitzvah? Lahafker oisan la'aniyim sheyochlo oisan b'shtei batzeiros. It's a hunger year. People don't have, they don't have food. And there's haniyim. So you want to, there's 10 apples laying here on the ground. You want to be mafker them to the aniyim. So the aniyim should be able to eat them on Shabbos afternoon. Gam kein asur. The apples are still asur. The af shehutar lehen lahachelos aniyim demai. Even though we do find times that we relax an isur d'Rabbanan in order to help out aniyim, and the example given over here is the halacha of demai. What's demai? Demai is a contraction. It's a contraction of two words, da-mai. What is this here? What is this here? What does that mean? Demai is produce of Eretz Yisrael that you purchased it from an Am Ha'aretz. You purchased it from an Am Ha'aretz, and you don't know if the Am Ha'aretz separated maisrus or not. So we don't know, is this produce tevel lemaisrus? Is it produce where maisrus were not yet separated and therefore really you're not allowed to eat them? Or maybe the Am Ha'aretz did separate maiser, and maybe it's 100% mutter to eat it. It's a suffix. Now, mid'Rabbanan, Chazal said you're not allowed to eat that produce. Even though Roiv Amei Haaretz Ma'asrin Hein, even though the Chazal found that most Amei Haaretz did separate Maasros properly, and therefore really this produce should be mutter, because we should go after the Roiv, and we should assume that the Amoritz did separate Maasros, but the Chazal made halach of Demai, and they said no. Midrabanan, if you don't know if the Amoritz separated Maasros, you cannot eat it. But there's a relaxation in that Isser, and that is you're allowed to give it to Aniyim. If you have produce of Demai, you can't eat it. But you want to give it to an Ani, you could give it to an Ani. So we see that we're relaxing in Issa D'Rabbanan to help out the Aniyim. Maybe so too over here by the apples under the tree. Maybe we should relax the Issa D'Rabbanan and say that you could give the apples to the Aniyim. The halacha says the Mishnah Berurah is no. While it's true that we relax the Issa D'Rabbanan of Demai, we do not relax the Isurei D'Rabbanan of Shabbos and Yom Tov to help out Aniyim. Ois Katan Vav, Mina Ilon B'Shabbos. We're dealing here with fruits that fell off the tree on Shabbos. Now, by the way, let's just realize, we have not yet seen what the reason for this Isser is. The halacha of the Mechaber is, fruits fell off the tree on Shabbos, they're also on Shabbos. We have not yet seen why. Why are they also? Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Vav Mina Ilon B'Shabbos. V'hu adin, the same halacha applies zra'im v'yerakos, vegetables or other types of seeds. Hanimtzaim beginois, that you find in the garden, and you find them detached. So you went ahead and you planted tomatoes and zucchinis and peppers in your vegetable patch in the backyard. Shabbos morning before the Suda, you go out and you find a couple of beautiful tomatoes, a couple of beautiful peppers, and a couple of beautiful cucumbers laying on the ground, already tolush. They fell off the vines. So you say to yourself, wow, look at this. Mamish, amatana min hashamayim. I have a beautiful fresh tomato, a beautiful fresh cucumber, a beautiful fresh pepper to have for my Shabbos Suda. Nope. Asur la'achlon. You're not allowed to eat them. Va'af l'taltalon. And you're not allowed to move them. Why? Shem and Nashur Hayom. Because it's a suffix. You don't know when they fell off the vine. Maybe they fell off the vine on Shabbos. Davar sheyesh lo matirin. Wait till Motzei Shabbos. Eat it on Motzei Shabbos. On Shabbos, it's asur. V'dan, you should know, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ta'afilu im yodeya shenashru be'erev Shabbos. Let's say you went out to the tomato patch on Erev Shabbos and you saw the tomato laying on the ground. And you had in mind to pick it up and you forgot. And now Shabbos morning you need a tomato for the salad. So you say, oh, I remember. There's a beautiful tomato laying on the ground. Let me go get it. Einoi mutter rak lelachet echad ula'achloi. The only heter is to go pick one and eat it. You want to get one tomato off the ground? You know it fell off before Shabbos. You want to get one and bring it in and eat it? That you could do. You want to pick up two, even though you know that they fell off the vine before Shabbos? That's usher. Avalesev kama peres b'yachad. But to pick up multiple, meaning even two, to pick up multiple tomatoes, multiple peres at one time, even though you know they fell off on Erev Shabbos. Yesh bazeh iser gamur. This is an iser daraisa, my friends. What is a daraisa? Ukid lekaman b'simin shin mem siftes. We're going to learn about this Mirz Hashem Be'ez Hashem Yisparach in Siman Shin Mem. D'chol davar hamekabetz b'makom giduloi. Whenever you gather up multiple pieces of produce where they grow, so you're gathering up tomatoes from the tomato patch, you're gathering up cucumbers from the vegetable garden. Again, we're talking about produce that you know fell off the vine on Erev Shabbos. Doime lema'amer. This is like one of the Lamites Malachas, which is ma'amer, gathering and making bundles. And this is doimel ma'amer. The words that the Mishnah Berurah is using over here say that it's an issa d'Rabbanan. Ma'amer is an issa d'Oraisa. Now, you're not really doing ma'amer. You're not picking up multiple pieces and bundling them. You're picking up two tomatoes. But it's at least doimel ma'amer. V'ayin sham b'biral b'Mishnah Berurah sivkat lam zayin to korov d'yesh bazech yiv chatas. Might even be an issa d'Oraisa. Finally, we come to Mishnah Berurah's Katan Zayin. Asurin. The Mechaber told us that these apples that fell off the tree are also on Shabbos. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah. I'll tell you why. Mishum shema yalav yitloish. Gzera d'Rabbanan. if we're going to allow you to eat the apples that fell off the tree on Shabbos, you might pick up 1 or 2 apples, and then you'll see even a prettier one up on the tree. You might go climb up on the tree, which is an Issa D'Rabbanan, climbing on a tree, and then you might pick the apple. It's a Daraisa, Toilish. V'gam mishum muktzah. These apples are also usher because of muktzah. Why? How are they muktzah? Well, when they were on the tree, they were usher. Because an apple that's on the tree you can't use on Shabbos. To pick it would be toilish. So that means that when Shabbos came in by Ben Hashmashis, that apple wasn't available to you. Well, Kevin Diskatsoi Midaitei Ben Hashmashis, once you removed your mind from the use of that apple during Ben Hashmashis, why? Because during Ben Hashmashis it was still attached to the tree. You can't use an apple that's attached to the tree. It becomes muktzah for the entirety of Shabbos. But v'lo erev mutar miyad. The minute Shabbos is over, those apples are going to become mutar. You don't have to wait any amount of time. You'll say, I have to wait 3 minutes, the amount of time it might take for the apple to fall. No. The gzeira that says that you have to wait for b'chtei sheyaseh is when malacha was done. So if a guy did malacha for you in a way that was not mutter, so then whatever he did is aser until after Shabbos, but then after Shabbos you have to wait b'chtei sheyaseh. You have to wait an amount of time that the guy would be able to perform that malacha during that time. You have to wait for that amount of time. But that's only when malacha was performed. Over here, no malacha was performed. Okay, let's start Sif Daled. We know that there's an Issa Daraisa of Tikkun Moneh. You're not allowed to form a keli on Shabbos. Machlokes, exactly what is that Issa Daraisa? Is it the Issa of Boineh? Is it building? Or is it Makeh B'Patish? That's a Machlokes. But Tikkun Moneh is definitely an Issa Daraisa. Now, one important thing to keep in mind is that the Issa Daraisa of Tikkun Moneh is when you form a keli using tools. When you form a keli using an implement. So you use a saw and to cut something and make a keli, you use a chisel to form something into a keli. That is an Issa Daraisa. To make something with your hand, that's considered kalacher yad, that's considered atypical, and that's an Issa D'Rabbanan. But this is the Issa of Tikkun Moneh, fashioning kelim. Having said that, says the Mechaber an interesting thing. Achlei behema. Things that are available for use as animal fodder. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, take a look at Ice Cut Test. Achlei behema. Ritzayne loimer davar sheroi la'achila lebehema. Something that is roi to be used as animal fodder. Even if it's not something that its default use is animal fodder, but it's something that can be used as animal fodder. Going, for example, eitzim rakim, tender twigs, very tender and soft wooden shoots. Sheroi lehem la'achila. Animals can eat those. They're very soft, the animal could chew it up, and the animal could eat it. Go take a look at what goats and cows eat. They'll go over to a young tree, and they'll pull it in with their mouths, and they'll eat soft branches. So soft twigs and soft branches can be used as animal fodder. Now, the soft branches of trees, are they oimid to be animal fodder? No. That's not their default use, but they are roi to be animal fodder. Gam kein loy miskaria aleim shem keli. They don't become called a keli. Let's go back into the Mechaber and understand what this means. The Mechaber says, achlei behema, things that can be used as animal fodder. So we're going to use the example of soft twigs, soft branches. Ein behem mishun tikkun keli. They are not subject to the Isser of Tikkun Moneh. What does that mean? That means, were you to take a soft twig, okay, you can't break it off the tree, but if there's a soft twig laying on the floor, now our default position always is that eitzim va'avonim, sticks and stones, muktzah machmas gufay, very high level muktzah, right? But, if you have a soft twig and you would take it and you would fashion it into a toothpick, that would not be the Isser D'Oraisa of Tikkun Moneh, because the Isser D'Oraisa of Tikkun Moneh does not apply to something which is available as animal fodder. Why? So the Achronim say that soft twigs, they're not roy to make kalim out of. They're too soft. They're too pliable. They're not roy to make kalim out of. And therefore, we don't recognize, even if you take it, you fashion it into a keli, we don't recognize halachically that you actually made a keli, because it's too inferior. We don't recognize it as a keli. Therefore, says the Mechaber, there is no Isser of Tikkun Moneh when it comes to something like a soft twig, which really is available to be animal fodder. It could be animal feed. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut yud mishum tikkun keli. The Isser of Tikkun Moneh doesn't apply to such a twig. Now, how about the Isser of muktzah? Eitzim vavonim, muktzah makmas gufay. Does that apply to such a twig? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Mutter af betiltel. Such a twig is not muktzah. Even though eitzim vavonim, sticks and stones, muktzah makmas gufay, that's talking about hard sticks. But a soft twig is not muktzah makmas gufay. The davar aroy la'achila muchanu l'chol psairich. Essentially, what we're saying over here is, when we see a soft twig laying on the ground in the backyard, that's not the eitzim vavonim that are muktzah makmas gufay. No. What we're seeing is animal fodder. We're seeing, oh, we could throw that to the goats. The goats can eat those. So that's food. And therefore, it's not muktzah makmas gufay. Once it's not muktzah makmas gufay, now you want to pick it up, you want to cut it into a toothpick, you can. Why? Because there's no Isser of Tikkun Moneh. Why? Because it's animal fodder. Let's see, Ice cut Yud Aleph, and then we'll stop there. Says the Mishnah, Ice cut Yud Aleph. You know what? That's going on a little fikach already. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. The source of Limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua for us, Parnas and Shidduchim to those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Bias Gael Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.